Live from the heartland and the crossroads of America, you're listening to Garrison with your host, Greg Garrison.
Let's get back to it, my friends. Hour number 2, Garrison for Monday. Pretty much a congressional day when we get the job done. U.S. Representative Marlin Stutzman, 3rd District Republican, our guest for a periodic visit. Great to have you with us this morning. Marlin, good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Great to be with you on WIBC.
So this lunatic friend of yours, your fellow congressperson, Todd Rokita, has the temerity on my show one day to point out that diseases coming across our southern border, my word, not his, probably much more frequent than marijuana and cocaine. We're getting what? Pneumonia, scabies, influenza. And he said, there's even Ebola, circulating around, he said, never suggesting that it was here. But by way of saying, we need to be careful. We ought to be paying attention. The stakes are high in letting a bunch of folks flood through this border.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you'd have thought the Constitution had been repealed. The editor of the Lafayette paper, this Northwest Indiana paper, a Huffington Post, just trying to skin Todd because of that. And I've said over and again, to me, all the man did was speak adult for a moment, which is to say, we ought to be careful in a world where we don't control things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no reason, and I think Todd and Meyer might have mentioned to you off air. Brendan Darby reported from Breitbart, Texas, last week. There have been 70 or 71 people captured or who have surrendered at the border, who came from one of the 3 countries that's suffering the 1,000-person death toll in Africa from Ebola. So the logic is there that it's a reason to be concerned. Now, the claim has been that he was fanning the flames and trying to come up with some kind of what's the right word, hyperbole to fan up the support of his conservative crowd. I don't know about you, but those things all worry me. And as we should, I would say, all those things are on the table if you're going to pay attention.
Well, Greg, I didn't hear exactly the context that Todd is speaking in, but I would say that we don't know what's coming across the border.
That's exactly right.
So, for anybody to say with great certainty that there's, we don't know what disease, name the disease, is not coming across the southern border, you cannot say that with 100% certainty. And while our National Guard, our border security is helping the kids who are used who are the victims in all of this on both sides because of the coyotes on the southern side who say, hey, we'll get your kids in, and when they get here, they're caught, and then they're going to end up likely being sent home. While we're taking care of the kids, who knows what's coming across the border in all other parts up and down the southern border. And so, for them to get all tied up on something that Todd said is ridiculous in my mind, because they need to go down there. Have they been to the border? Can they say with that kind of certainty that he's just, we know that they're bringing in particular people with Ebola, We don't know what all diseases. We're going to find out. I mean, that's the very frustrating part in all of this is that over time we're going to we can't again. Who knows who's coming across right now and what they're bringing across? They're not just bringing drugs. They might not be just bringing,
But you got to look to be clear here. See what happens to you if you have the courage to say, this is a dangerous time. Nothing's off the table. Immediately you're skinned by these people. Now, of course, he'll get past it. Todd's hide is tough. But it's a great study in the way the left does things. Todd?
Well, in last hour we were talking a little bit about this in the attacks, and for the editor of the Journal and Courier to basically do a hit piece was very interesting, to say the least, and tells you a little bit about his politics. But we were also discussing, this came up on this week in review with Jim Shella and Ann Delaney's comments. I don't give much credence to what Ann Delaney has to say, but her exaggerations. You want to talk about exaggerations? She went on about, for somebody to say that they came across the ocean and then up through Central America and Mexico, vomiting and all this and bleeding out. Well, let me tell you something. If you read about Ebola, it can take up to 21 days to show any symptoms. That's plenty of time. Am I saying it's happening? No, but we're saying that 71 people, according to the Breitbart Texas Brandon Darby, 71 people since January through July have been caught or turned themselves in on our southern border from the 3 Western African nations that have Ebola. That I don't see any of the folks that are being critical, like you said, being down there on the border and finding this out for themselves and talking to government agencies that reported this stuff with the numbers. I don't see that. So they can poo-poo Breitbart all they want and say that it's not a legitimate news source, but they're the ones down there doing the reporting, not Gannett, not the Times of Northwest Indiana, and as far as I know, not the Huffington Post.
Okay. Tell you what, let's do. Let's take a break on time here just for once in our lives. Marlin Stutzman, our guest. Lots more to come. We'll be back in mere moments. Congressman Marlin Stutzman, our guest. Now, what you've heard, my friends, from the considered and thoughtful approach of Congressman Stutzman is, we got to worry about the stuff that we can't identify coming across our border. Remember, and Marlon, this is an important piece of this. Another thing that shores up Todd Rokita's statements. They won't tell us what they're doing. Mike Pence is a hard guy to make mad, but his face was red sitting in here in this chair right over here when we talked about the 300 and some kids or so. Well, they've admitted there's a lot more than that. 246 or something like that was the number, but we know that it's over 300. Didn't tell us they were coming. We don't know where they are. We don't know who's got them, and we don't know what they've done to medically screen these kids, even for something as simple as influenza. So to say the world is full of deadly bugs, right? H1N1, Ebola, you name it. Those things are out there where they can kill folks in a hurry. We ought to concern ourselves with that. And I hope you guys close ranks with Todd and recognize that all that was done there was a statement by a grown-up saying we got to be careful.
Well, he's right, and we have to be careful. I mean, we're living in a day and age when we don't, and there's no cure for Ebola. So for us to play with fire, I mean, we're silly. Let's just be realistic that we don't know what's coming across the border. And I thought it was, Democrats and the left who are more concerned about our health care than anyone else in the world. Well, now when we don't know, and I'm not just talking about Ebola. I mean, we know there's chickenpox outbreaks, there's measles, mumps. I mean, there's a variety of things, and let's just be adults about it and realize, hey, you know what? The best thing that we could do is just check. Let's just make sure we know, because the last thing we want is for these kids who are going to be put in who knows what community now, attend our schools with our kids, and some outbreak happens. Do we need that to happen before we take a step back? I think it's silly. I mean, let's be realistic and say, while we have them here on the border, if we're going to put them into Indiana, if we're going to send them to Philadelphia, if we're going to send them to Dallas, Seattle, wherever, let's just check, because this is already going to be enough of a burden put on to our local schools. Most people, we all need to remember, most schools are funded with property taxes. And when these kids go to school this coming, even if they started now or, this month, over this next month, that's going to be more cost to the school. I'm sure people are more than glad to help them, but there is a cost to it. And we need to keep the cost as reasonable and as low as possible without any sort of outbreak or any sort of disease catching anywhere. I don't understand the outcry over Todd's comments. I mean, let's not stick our heads in the sand here.
Right. And, I could add how many of natural problems to that list. I said H1N1, and then there's the bird flu. These things, they're already around here. But if a bunch of infected kids come through,
and it's not just kids. That's the other aspect of this.
I mean,
the kids are a small part of this thing.
Well, they're getting to be bigger numbers, though, Todd. They're.
I understand that. However, the criminal element, whether you're talking cartels or just the coyotes in general running people over here, or gangs. MS-13 is prevalent coming up through their recruiting down there on the border when they get over here. There are a lot of, and then there are foreign nationals from countries that are targeted, or at least on our watch list in terms of people coming from those countries, also entering through there. We also saw in that same report over 1,400 Chinese since the beginning of the year. So it's not just the children, which is what they want to do. They want to hyper-focus on the poor kids, and it's very sad what's going on with these children down there and how parents can allow their children to go up through Mexico like this. However, it ain't just the kids.
No. And I guess my point would be, whether it's something as exotic and as terrifying as a guy with Ebola, or just a bunch of kids coming through with some virus that we don't see around here, you end up with the Border Patrol agents to whom they surrender themselves, the people at the welcome centers, where they are processed through, and then the families that take them when they get placed in Indiana or Nebraska or Tennessee or the like. Not to see that, not to recognize that is to be it's just tomfoolery. I don't understand the logic of it, but I can tell you this: our liberal friends are the last folks to want to face a real threat. They'll talk global warming till the cows come home, and act silly about something like that, which they can't prove anyway. But when you talk about a threat of something that really could devastate us, they don't want to talk about it.
Well, and, the other thing, too, here, Greg, is, and this is nothing. I mean, I'm not making any sort of comparison to terrorists flying, planes into towers on 9/11, or to strapping bombs onto their chest and walking into a marketplace. But let's just remember this, that there's a lot of people out there that want to do America harm, and they're willing to do it, whether it's sending anthrax through the mail, whether it's sending, the planes into a building. Let's not be silly here, and just think about the fact that why not send folks into the country if they can get across the border with some sort of virus that's going to cause a problem? It doesn't have to be on a massive scale. It doesn't have to be something that gains all of the attention on the 24-hour news cycle. if they can just cause a little bit of a problem in a community, who knows? Maybe they get something through that just becomes a greater problem than what we ever realized. I agree with you that I don't understand what is the harm in just making sure. I mean, we've sent millions and billions of dollars down there to the border, and again, because politicians in Washington don't want to control the border for political purposes. That's what I believe it's all about. This is about politics. This is not about any sort of policy. It's about gaining numbers for certain political reasons. But we are being foolish if we're going to let that cloud our decision making and decide not to check. I mean, whenever we take our kids anywhere, and I know you're saying it's not just about the kids, but we protect our kids. I mean, before we send them to school, they have to have their shots. I've got 2 boys, Peyton and Preston. I mean, we had to give them all sorts of different shots before we could send them to school. So for anybody to act like Todd has overblown something, I mean, goodness, we don't know what's coming across the border, and it'd be better to err on the side of caution here rather than to say, oh, this is just nothing. Let's, we can overlook that.
Yeah. Okay, real quick. You're back home. We're in recess. I know you've been all around the district and around the state. A lot of concerns about Iraq and other things. What are you hearing from the folks?
Yeah, I mean, the border is an issue, but what's going on over in Iraq? I was talking to a lot of veterans over the past couple of days, and they're very frustrated because when we tie their hands in, when they go out to defend our country, and we tie their hands, telling them that they have to follow all these different procedures before they can combat and fight and engage the enemy. They're frustrated. They want us either to go in and do the job or to get out, one or the other. And, for the president now to say that it wasn't his decision to pull all the troops out of Iraq, I don't know how this guy gets away with this. I mean, we have got to hold him – people got to hold him accountable because he was all throughout the 2008 campaign, that is all he talked about was ending these wars in Iraq in Afghanistan, and he doesn't take the responsibility. We know that part of the world. We know that they're going to continue to fight each other. There's tribal issues there, but we're going to have to at some point just take the responsibility, make sure that we're defending the Christians that are in that region, defending Israel, standing with Israel in that region, and there's bad people over there that we're going to have to go deal with sometime or another, and we need to be willing to send that message instead of shifting the blame to someone else and acting like I didn't have anything to do with it. My fingerprints aren't on it. They are. He's the president. He's the commander-in-chief, and he needs to take the responsibility and give the American people a clear vision on what his policy is regarding those in the Middle East. It's just a tragedy what's going on there and how these Christians over there are being killed and slaughtered.
Well, it's this state that you represent got a lot of blood and a lot of treasure in that Iraqi soil. We've had so much of our National Guard, so much of our Army and Air Force, even Marine Reserves in that fight. That's a raw nerve, Congressman, to see him just walking away from that. It's so remarkable to me. The DMZ, after the Korean War, left us without the capacity to protect anything or anybody. So North Korea turned into a horrible place. 1 million people are slaughtered by the North Vietnamese after we leave Saigon in Vietnam. Now they're doing it again. I know you're in a tough spot there, kid. I appreciate your honesty with us and your courage with regard to these subjects. Keep up the fight. We're back in a mere moment taking your phone calls. Stick around.